Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, logos means a study of science. Sattology means science of truth, a study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Sattology builds your identity, and mythology actually destroys your identity. And if you look at the world is built on mythology, especially in Kali Yuga, a age of quarrel and hypocrisy. The narratives have been created, the narratives are being created so that there is more control of some people over others. I have very, very special guest who has done a lot of research. He's a scientist and he does material research, but he has done history research too, because historians have forgotten. So let us welcome Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy.
Namaskar, Aditya.
Namaskar.
Pleasure to be back here.
So did I say anything wrong? That nowadays the engineers have to get into history research nowadays because the
It's
scientists.
our heritage, so it's our duty to fix our history, to learn our history, and if it is wrong, then we try to find out what is our true history, and that's we have been doing over the past six presentations, and we'll continue from there.
The two communities in the world are known for fake history. They live in fake history. One is the Poles. All the Polish jokes are made on Poles. In India, the jokes on Santa Banta are banned. But in Europe, the biggest jokes are on the Polish and the Greeks.
Mhm.
So isn't that true? Like there is some basis to this. Exaggerations, right?
Yes, there is a lot. If you read the Indica by Megasthenes, you will know all kind of fictitious things he talks about.
Yeah, and it is taken very seriously. Like if you go to American University campus, I am studying Greek history. I mean, the moment they say Greek history, it looks like it better study Disney comics or any imaginary. Watch a Hollywood movie where Men in Black has more history than than any of the Greek historians they come up with. Anyway, I'll don't wait and please let's get started and then we'll continue discussion towards the end.
Sure, Aditya, I will start sharing.
Yes, please.
So, can you see my screen now?
Very clear, very clear.
I'll just put it on the full screen. Okay, so thank you, Aditji. So we are going to talk about the invasion of India by Alexander today. So I'll just give the background, all the talks that we have done on Sattology so far, just a summary of that. And basically, we have been discussing the construction of ancient Indian history, how it has been constructed. And we have seen that there are two seat anchors of Indian history, and those have been fixed. And then the ancient Indian history has been constructed by going backward and forward from those two seat anchors. So we discussed that the first seat anchor is the identification of Sandrocotus of Greek accounts with Chandragupta Maurya. And then we discussed it, and in the part three, we saw that there is no clinching evidence in favor of identifying Sandrocotus with Chandragupta Maurya, because we only have the similarity of first name, and then the Sandrocotus could as well be the Chandragupta one of the imperial Gupta dynasty. And we have here both the Chandraguptas as founders of two great dynasties. And then we discuss the second seat anchor, because if there is confusion about the first one, then the historians say that is the second one that is so solid that you cannot challenge it. And that second seat anchor is the identification of Devanam Priyadarshi with Ashok Maurya. But we see that in the inscriptions that Kaling War was the most important event in the life of Devanam Priyadarshi. But this Kaling War is not mentioned anywhere in the literature about Ashok Maurya, which would be the case if both of them were the same. And then in part 5, we I discussed a new identification for Devanam Priyadarshi with Kumar Gupta one. And then finally, in the last talk, we discussed about the identification of the 5 Greek kings that are mentioned in the major rock edicts. And I discussed that the Antioch mentioned in these major rock edicts has to be Antiochus III, not the Antiochus II that historians have currently identified with. And if that is the case, then really that rules out Ashok Maurya because he's grandson of Chandragupta I. So his time will be much earlier than this. But in case of Kumar Gupta I, since he's great grandson of Chandragupta I, so that another generation ahead, so we can match this timing, his timing perfectly with Antiochus III. And I'm going to discuss the dating according to me in the coming talks. So what we are going to discuss today is the invasion of India by Alexander. And this is uh, it was not so great event if you look from the Indian point of view, because we don't have really any mention of the invasion of India by Alexander in our sources. But it becomes important because the history has been constructed basically based upon the invasion of India by Alexander and his contemporary Chandragupta Maurya. So, and also the war between the Alexander and Porus, that is also a subject of controversy. So, it is important to discuss what happened when Alexander came to India or India's borders. So, to know about the invasion of India by Alexander, uh, there's a great book that has been compiled by John W. McCrindle. And the name of this book is The Invasion of India by Alexander the Great. So what McCrindle has done, that he has taken information about this invasion from different sources, Greek sources, and then he has compiled them together. So it's a great source book if you want to go into the details. And he mentions that in this book, he has based it on these 5 Greek historians. So the Arian, who wrote the Anabasis of Alexander, and then we have Quintus Curtius, he wrote the history of Alexander the Great. Then we have Plutarch, and then we have Diodorus, and finally we have got Justinus or Justin. And these 5 peoples, he has also talked about what was their time period when they wrote it. And his McCrindle says that Arian, he was born towards the end of first century of our era, so first century CE. About Quintus Curtius refers, he says nothing is known with certainty about his time or where he lived. Plutarch again, he says the date of birth is unknown, but may be fixed towards the middle of the first century of our era. Diodorus, he says, is a contemporary of Julius Caesar, so a few decades before the birth of Jesus Christ, let's say from the at least from the calendar. And then we have got Justin, and his timing is again uncertain, but not later than 5th century of our era. So basically, we have got these. So, some 3 of them are closer to the beginning of this calendar that we use, the Christian calendar, and some of them are even later. So none of them seem to be writing exactly from the first-hand account. So these are later on because Alexander invaded around 326 BC. So now we try to learn more about Alexander. So how he came to the border of India. So we start from his birth. And he was born in 356 BCE in what we call what is was ancient Macedonia, and now is the modern day northern Greece. And he reigned from 336 BCE to 323 BCE. So it was just merely 13 years in which he conquered a large part of the world, at least that known world of that time. And so he was basically, if you see 356 to 336, so only like 19, 20-year-old when he ascended to the throne. And basically, his father Philip was assassinated in 336 BCE, following which he became the king. But the thing is, Justin has written that there may have been a larger plot to kill the king. So his father was killed, assassinated, and somebody is blamed for it, let's say. But he thinks there was a bigger plot, and it was not a simple assassination by somebody just disgruntled with the king, that there was a plot, and that plot may have involved his mother and Alexander himself. So that's a very serious charge. And that just to become the king, basically, Philip was, his father was marrying a lot, and if he had got many issues, then that was a lot of competition for Alexander. And once Alexander became the king, then he basically asked all the Greek city states, so there were many in the Greece then, to accept his rule. And one of them refused. It was the Thebes city in Greece. And what basically happened, that Alexander conquered it, and he basically destroyed the whole city. So you hear a lot about the greatness, but if you look at the character of Alexander, it's not really that great. And after that, he has basically combined all of the Greece. Then he launched a campaign against the Persian Empire. With the Persian Empire, before the time of Greek, there was history of the fight between the Persians and the Greeks. And then there were many battles fought against the Persian Empire because it was a very powerful empire of that time. So basically, in 334 BCE, he won the first major battle that was fought in what is modern day Western Turkey. And then the two parties regrouped, and then they had a second major battle called Battle of Issus, and this was near in southern Turkey, so close to modern day Syria. And then following year, Alexander went to Egypt, so he conquered Egypt, and then after that he again moved to the eastern part of the Persian Empire. So Persian Empire was very big at that time, bordering India. So now he came to the eastern side, and the third battle he won, that was fought in northern Iraq. So that was 331 BCE. And then from 330 to 327 BCE, he campaigned in Central Asia. So basically, you have got northern Iran and Afghanistan and parts of Asia that are north of all these countries. So basically, he was there for 3 years, and in those 3 years, he basically killed two of his closest friends. So one of them was named Parmenio. He was the former second in command, and then another was Cletus, who had even saved his life at this battle of Granicus. So basically, two of his closest friends he got killed during these 3 years. So another blot on his character. And after that, he moved towards Taxila across the Indus River. So this picture basically tells you, it's from the Columbia University website, the path that Alexander took for his victories. So you have these arrows, and then finally that towards the end of this, after this Central Asia, he is here, and that's the Taxila. And that's where basically we have the part that is important for Indian history. So basically, we have here, we have got Indus River here, and we have got this Jhelum River here that they call Hydaspes. And we have got Islamabad here, so that's close to where Taxila is, around this area, uh, some 20-30 miles away from here. So it is this area here, and just across the Indus, that he came. And when he came here, then he met the ruler of Taxila, which was an important kingdom of that time. So once he came towards the Indus River, and then the east of river, so between the Indus and Jhelum River, we have this ruler of Taxila, and again his name is given differently by these Greek writers, Taxilas or Omphis or Mophis, uh, by all these historians that we discussed, Arian, Curtius, or Diodorus. And so Taxilas ruled between these a region between these rivers, Indus and Hydaspes or Jhelum. And and this Jhelum was called Vitasta in the ancient times. And basically, Taxilas just did not offer any fight. He just surrendered, and he offered his services to Alexander. So this is how Arian talks about it. That when Alexander came to this Indus River, and so he found a present which had been sent by Taxilas the Indian, consisting of 200 talents of silver, 3,000 oxen, and 10,000 sheep, and 30 elephants. And he sent a force of 700 horsemen. And these brought word that Taxila surrendered into his hands, his capital Taxila, the greatest of all the cities. So once Taxilas or the ruler of Taxila surrendered, then he comes to the what is across Jhelum. So let's say between the Jhelum here and Chenab, it is this region, and that's where we have a great ruler of that time, Porus, ruling this area. So beyond this Hydaspes or Jhelum, we have a fearless warrior king named Porus, and he was ready to defend his kingdom. So he was not surrendering at all. And this is how Curtius describes him. So when Alexander asked him whether he had more husbandmen or soldiers, he replied that as he was at war with two kings, he required more soldiers than field laborers. So this is Taxilas telling him that he's at war with these two kings on the other side of Jhelum. And these names are given. These kings were Abisaras, so Abisar, and Porus. But Porus was superior in power and influence, and both of them held sway beyond the river Hydaspes. And they had resolved to try the fortune of war, whatever invader might come. So Alexander, thinking that by the mere prestige of his name, Porus also would be induced to surrender, sent Cleochares to tell him in peremptory terms that he must pay tribute and come to meet his sovereign at the very frontiers of his own dominions. So basically, Alexander wanted him to surrender, and this is the answer he received. So the Porus answered that he would comply with the second of these demands, and when Alexander entered his realm, he would meet him, but armed for battle. So he basically said that they will meet in the battlefield. And so in the van of his army, he had posted 85 elephants of greatest size and strength, and behind these 300 chariots and 30,000 infantry. So basically, tells you that Porus was well prepared, and he was watching Alexander's move. He was himself mounted on an elephant, and which towered above all his fellows. So basically, you see that suddenly we hear great things about Porus from all these great writers. His courage matched his bodily vigor, and his wisdom was the utmost attainable in a rude community. So we have here is that Porus is being talked about in glorious terms, and we'll understand why in the next talk. So basically, what we have got this river, and other side is if he's ready and watching, then obviously the other side has advantage because he has to cross this river, which is flooded. So it was not easy for Alexander to cross the Hydaspes with his army while the Porus is already watching with all his archers. So Alexander tried to fool Porus by maneuvering his troops, but did not succeed. So basically, what Alexander wanted to do was to sneak in. So just to go across without Porus noticing him. But Porus has all these people watching the whole river banks and looking at the other sides. So basically, for a while, Alexander played these war games of trying to fool that he's trying to cross, but he was not really crossing. And he kept on doing it, and he really thought that he kept on doing it, that ultimately Porus will drop his guard and he will not bother, and he will just, Alexander will one day just cross by fooling him. So it says that Alexander encamped on the banks of the river, and Porus was seen on the opposite side with his army, with his array of elephants. And again, the places where he saw Alexander had encamped, he remained himself to guard the passage. But he sent detachments of his men, each commanded by a captain, to guard all parts of the river where it could be easily forded. So basically, Porus had set up his troops at different places wherever he thought that Alexander could cross. So when Alexander saw this, he thought it expedient to move his army from place to place so that Porus might be at a loss to discover his real intentions. So basically, Alexander wanted to fool him, just to try to cross here, try to cross there, and just hope that one day Porus will not be attentive. This purpose, he divided his army into many parts, and some of the troops he led himself in different directions, sometimes to ravage the enemy's country, and sometimes to find out where he could most easily ford the river. So he was trying to cross the river sometime uh, easily without being attacked from the other side while crossing. So he placed various commanders at various times on different divisions of his army and dispatched them also in different directions. And at the same time, caused provisions to be conveyed to the camp from all parts of the country uh, to impress Porus with the conviction that he intended to remain where he was near the bank till the waters of the river subsided in winter and afforded him a large choice of passages. So basically, with all these things like getting the provisions, he was trying to tell Porus, make him believe that he was just going to stay there for months for the whole. It was rainy season. There was a lot of water in the river, and he will wait till the winter when there is less water and there will be easier to cross at different points. So this kind of thing went on, and he said that he was going to remain there for the whole season. And he clearly saw that it was impossible for him to cross where Porus himself had encamped near the bank of the Hydaspes. Not only because he had so many elephants, but also because his large army arrayed for battle and splendidly accoutred was ready to attack his troops the moment they landed. So the Porus was ready to attack him, not even after landing. They could be attacked right where they are crossing in the river, like sitting ducks. So Alexander himself embarked on a 30-oared galley. I went over accompanied by all these commanders, Ptolemy and others. Ptolemy, after his death, became the ruler of Egypt. And of course, Seleucus, who got another large chunk of his empire and later had a fight with Changutmoj. So all these people were there with him. And as soon as the soldiers had passed beyond the island, they steered for the bank, being now full in view of the enemy, whose sentinels, on seeing their approach, galloped off at the utmost speed of each man's horse to carry the tidings to Porus. So basically, all his attempt to really fool Porus failed. When he was crossing, he was easily seen. He was caught crossing. So then we come to the battle of this Hydaspes. This battle, the famous battle called the Battle of Hydaspes of Alexander with Porus. So finally, the armies of Alexander and Porus charged against each other on the banks of the Hydaspes. Plutarch has described this famous battle of the Hydaspes in the following words. So this is how this battle has been described. And so it says, at last, upon a dark and stormy night, he took a part of the infantry and a choice body of cavalry, marched towards considerable distance from the enemy and crossed over. Here he was exposed with the army to the rage of a violent thunderstorm. So even the weather was very, very bad while they were crossing. Amid which fell down in torrents, and though he saw some of his men struck dead with the lightning, he nevertheless advanced from the island and reached the further most bank of the river. The Hydaspes was now flooded by the rains, and its raging current had chosen a new channel of great width, down which a great body of water was carried. So basically, see that it's the Alexander who is at clear disadvantage. The weather is so bad, and this crossing is so bad, and other side Porus is ready to attack. After crossing, he himself rode forward about 20 stadia in advance of the infantry. If the enemy attacked him with their cavalry only, he could easily rout them. But if they moved forward their entire force, he could bring his infantry into the field before fighting began. He was right in both conclusions, for he fell in with 1,000 horse and 60 war chariots of the enemy, and these he routed, capturing every chariot and slaying 400 of the horsemen. So basically, these Greeks are now showing that there was a battle after they landed, and basically the Porus army was routed by Alexander. And then it continues. The Porus that perceived that Alexander himself had crossed the river, and he therefore advanced against him with all his army, except some troops which he left to guard his camps and to attack it. Alexander, dreading the elephants and the number of the enemy, did not engage with them in front, but attacked them himself on the left wing, ordering Quirinus to fall upon them on the right. Both wings were broken, and the enemy, driven from their position, thronged always towards the center where the elephants were posted. So it's saying that the Porus army of Porus was attacked from both sides. And then we come to this. The contest, which began early in the morning, so basically it continued for the whole day, for 8 hours of the day, before the Indians renounced attempt at their further resistance. The description of the battle is given by the chief actor in it himself. Most historians are agreed that Porus stood 4 cubits and a span high. So that is so the Greeks are saying that the Porus was a very tall man, and that his gigantic form was not less proportion to the elephant which carried him, which was the biggest than was a rider of an ordinary size to his horse. So they describe Porus as a very formidable figure, a very imposing figure, a great warrior. And then he says that finally there was a lot of attack on his elephant. And this elephant showed wonderful sagacity and for its royal master, for while it was still vigorous, defended him against his assailants and repulsed them. But when it perceived that he was ready to sink from the number of his wounds and bruises, fearing that he might fall off its back, it gently lowered itself to the ground, and as it knelt quietly, extracted the darts from his body with his trunk. So basically, he says that Alexander armies they attacked Porus, and his elephant was badly injured, and finally he knelt down and gently led Porus up from his back. And finally, we see that Porus was taken prisoner. So when Porus was taken prisoner, Alexander asked him how he wished to be treated. And this is what we have read in all our history books. And Porus says, like a king. So when the Porus is asked how he is to be treated, so like a king treats another king. And answered Porus. When Alexander further asked if he had anything else to request, and everything, rejoined Porus, is comprised in the word like a king. Alexander then not only reinstated Porus in his kingdom with the title of satrap, but added a large province to it, subduing the inhabitants whose form of government was the republican. This country, it is said, contained 15 tribes, 5,000 considerable cities, and villages without number. So this is what we learn in our history book, that this Alexander was such a great man. Then when Porus was captured, he asked Porus how he should be treated. And when Porus said like a king, Alexander was so impressed by his reply that he added to his kingdom. He gave him back his kingdom, and not even give him back, but he added to his kingdom. So this is what we read, but is this really what happened during this famous battle between Alexander and Porus? And this we will talk about in the next presentation, to be continued in the next part. That will be the part 8 of our talks. I would like to thank Aditji for this talk, and Dr. Mahendra Thakur and the Sattology team for organizing this talk. Thank you, Aditji.
Thank you so much. And now the question comes in, and we can stop the sharing.
Yes.
So the question comes in. So when the nowadays the historians say Alexander conquered India, today's India, never happened.
It,
We should say Alexander conquered Pakistan, if we still regard Pakistan as an independent country. No, it's,
well, Aditya, things are getting very, very steady nowadays because Pakistan now claims that it has got 5,000 year civilization. But according to us, the Pakistan only came into existence 75 years ago.
yeah. No, Pakistanis have a habit of claiming more than what they can chew. Like they also their prime minister also claimed that they know more about the history of Turkey than Turkey itself. So
In one of the serials made in Turkey, it seems more popular in Pakistan than it's in Turkey.
yeah, because they are living on borrowed identity. So they don't understand they were Hindus before they were forcibly converted on sword, and so they're living on borrowed identity. So they don't have their own identity. Sometimes they call themselves Iraqi, sometimes they call themselves Persian, they call themselves Turkish nowadays. Before that, they were calling themselves Arab also. So the
There was this,
Arabs,
there was this very funny news article that came from Pakistan where the teachers are on a strike and they said that if you don't comply, if you don't agree to all our terms, we will start teaching the real history of Pakistan.
yeah, that's true. So they have to say that they were Chaudhary, they were Kshatriya before, and how they were so weak that they got converted, and they have to claim that they're the children of cowards. They have to say all those things, and before they do anything, historical perspective. So
Yes, it's a matter of perception. I mean, there are people there. Now I see when I go read some articles about Pakistan that people are there also are starting to realize that it was the King Dahir who was the real hero.
yeah, King Dahir was a real hero, and he protected. I mean, they have to come back. They have to leave all the Arabic mindset they have. They have to leave that and come back to Sanatan Dharma. Otherwise, not possible for them. One thing I have noticed is that any country who does not or who does not learn their own history, those countries are not economically prosperous. Check it out. Like, for example, South America. All the countries are poor.
Mhm.
Despite the Europeans conquered them, and today their languages are European languages they speak. But all of them are poor.
But that also, Aditi, because they took all the riches from there to Europe. So there were basically ships that they melted all the gold. I mean, also, there was so much gold, all these Inca and all these other civilizations that were there. I mean, basically, they conquered them by treachery and then they took away all their gold, silver. And that's how Spain suddenly became rich. I
Yeah.
mean, the Spaniards were the most brutal, these invading people in the history.
I mean, the thing is, like in my book, Gold, Glory, and God, I recorded 60,000 tons of gold was taken just from Tenochtitlan, which is Mexico City today.
Right.
60,000 tons. That's just one city, Aztecs. And Incas and Mayans were much more richer.
So
And
basically in few years you can see the whole place becomes poor and another part of the world becomes so rich.
Europe,
60,000 tons of gold, imagine how
Europe.
much is that in today. And
So,
same with
so
India, 45 trillion dollars worth of uh, money goods were taken out.
and
That's what
these
led our country India into becoming a third world from the first world.
and also just imagine if these countries had so much gold, what was India?
Exactly.
What they have stolen from us. Even today, India is the largest gold consumer in the world. Even today, हम लोग खाने के साथ दाल चावल के साथ सोना भी पी जाते हैं, हजम भी कर जाते हैं.
But we do have that, वो सोने का वो work लगाते हैं.
हाँ, अभी भी लगाते हैं. और and then the Persians called सोने की चिड़िया to motivate their looters to loot. हम लोगों ने उसको मान लिया हम सोने की चिड़िया नहीं, हम लोग बोलते हम सोने का शेर है. So then कुछ बात बनती है. And the Indian politicians have controversy. उसके दांत ज्यादा दिख रहे हैं. You saw those things, right?
Yeah.
Like there are no other things left. So, so we still are highly colonized people, and we are
Very sad situation. Yes.
very sad. We still heavily colonized, and we are speaking in English to educate the Americans and the British. Hey, what you did to us? That's why speaking in English, so that you understand it, and also and even today, if I remove the Indians from Silicon Valley, what will happen to Silicon Valley?
It's a
Nothing.
really amazing what Indians have achieved in
Actually,
Silicon Valley.
like because the mathematical brains, even today, like you and I go to many events, we go to different places where social events we go. Ideologically, bankruptcy, you can see that in the conversations over there, isn't it? Like I can't talk that much that the other guys talk. I have to keep quiet half the time. Yesterday, I was in an event. I was invited. It was a American Marine Corps event, some Marine Corps, and I had to just stay quiet. Whole event, I didn't speak anything, even though I was invited as a guest to speak. And then
Mhm.
I spoke 5 minutes on the stage.
Yes.
But I had to keep quiet because I did not understand where I can add value in the conversation.
Mhm.
And they told me, you speak so much on the YouTube, why are you not speaking here? I said, I don't know what to speak. I literally don't know. Because the
Right.
small talk is the main talk nowadays.
Mhm.
Like what will happen at it, I'm not making comment on the society, but I'm just saying people describe their individual incidents and experiences in so much detail that you can write a book on it, how they're
Yes. Yes.
describing it. Small things like what they ate, and they'll spend half an hour in describing and emotions and how, like, it's beyond us, like beyond, I think you also, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the kind of things you see posted on their Instagram accounts and all that. What they went to the washroom, they want to post a picture of that.
So audience, this kind of conversations which we are having on Sattology shows are very important, is knowledgeable, has some basis, and at the end of the day, you learn something, gain something, and you can share something. Like we need to increase the level of conversations also we have in whether in American, because and believe me, the same things are coming to India also, same things, because they're copying American culture, small talk. In India is worse because they're copying without understanding what was the problem over there. Even the educated Americans don't participate in these kind of conversations, small talks. But India also, the small talk is becoming the main talk, which is a big problem, big problem. you know. So thank you so much, Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, for educating and for telling us about the real history of Alexander, that he still, Pakistan again, even historically was conquered again. That land has a problem. And unless they are part of India, it's not going to solve anything, because they have to leave the religion, Arabic religion, out and say, Arabic religion, give it back to them because it's for them. And that's how the Afghanistan will also improve. Thank you so much. And I hope this presentation is used by the Indian policymakers, and they can revise their textbooks, and with the maps of American universities, Columbia University, see it out over there. So if you copy Americans so much, then copy the real things also.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you
you
so much, Aditji.
and
Namaste.
namaste.